So it's determinants, determinants of matrices. And I'm going to show you how to find a 2 by 2 determinant. That means when your matrix has 2 rows and 2 columns. And then I'm going to show you how to find a 3 by 3 determinant. That means your matrix has 3 rows and 3 columns. So the 3 by 3 is going to be the longer example. Alright, so we'll start with I can actually give you a little formula. Okay, I'll start with a little formula for the 2 by 2s and the 3 by 3s. There's a formula, but it's so crazy it's really hard to follow the formula, so I'll just show you an example of the 3 by 3. But if they're asking you to find the determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix, so this matrix represents any 2 by 2 matrix. That's why they're putting the letters in there, A, B, C, D. It's just a general matrix. What do you see already that's different other than I have letters in there instead of numbers? It's not brackets. Okay, so in the world of matrices, if they're wanting you to find the determinant, then the symbol for determinant actually also looks like the symbol for absolute value. So that's another thing that you have to know, is that sometimes it'll just say find the value of, and it'll give you a matrix, and it'll have the absolute value bars around the matrix instead of the brackets. And you're just supposed to know that those absolute value bars don't mean find the absolute value. It means find the determinant. So that's the symbol for determinant, is the brackets will turn into little vertical bars. So the formula goes like this: A times D minus B times C. And you'll always start in the upper left on the 2 by 2 and the 3 by 3. You'll always start multiplying in the upper left, and then you'll do A times D, upper left times bottom right, minus is in the formula, and then you'll do B times C, and then you'll simplify that. Alright, so let's look at a 2 by 2 example. So example, what number are we on? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Okay. So on example 5, if they asked you to find this. So there'll be numbers here. There won't be any variables. Those variables were just to show you the general case or the formula. The 2 by 2s are really, really easy. Probably just as easy as adding and subtracting. So the formula says start in the upper left, so that means we start with a number 4. We start with 4 and we say 4 times 3 is 12. And then the formula says subtract. So always put your subtract, and then I'll go ahead and put my parentheses, because I might multiply and get a negative number, or I might multiply and get a positive number, but the formula says I have to subtract. So it's 12 minus, because the minus is in the formula, and then it's 5 times negative 2, which is negative 10. So it's always minus because that's in the formula. So it's A times D minus B times C, and then you just simplify that out. 12 minus negative 10 is 12 plus 10, which is 22. All right. Determinants are used, and again, we're not going to get to use some of the things that we're doing with these matrices, because our job right now in Algebra 2 is just to teach you how to add, subtract, multiply, find determinants, and find inverses. Later on, you're going to use those values, and it's hard. If I could show you why and how you're going to use these values, it would be helpful. But I can just tell you, you can use them to solve equations, big equations that have multiple variables in them. Okay? And in this class, we don't have to solve equations with them. We just have to teach you how to find the determinant of a matrix. All right, how can this get more difficult? This can get more difficult if the matrix is not a 2 by 2. All right? You're only going to be asked to find determinants of a 2 by 2 matrix, 2 rows and 2 columns, and a 3 by 3. So let's look at a 3 by 3. And there is a formula for this one, but it is extremely complicated, so I think it would just be better to just show you an example. Another helpful tip here is that you keep everything lined up. And that's another reason sometimes I like to work out my homework on graph paper, just on the blue graph paper where the whole page is a graph, because it keeps everything lined up. Alright, so here they're going to ask us to find the determinant of a 3 by 3. I wish we could just start with -2 and do -2 times 1 times -3 and then subtract the other ones, but it doesn't work that way with a 2 by 2 because you're leaving out numbers when you just do diagonal multiplying. So the first thing that you do is you take the first two columns. If you have a 3 by 3, you take the first two columns and you rewrite them on the right hand side of the matrix. You take the first two columns and you rewrite them on the right hand side of the matrix. Then you still start multiplying in the upper left. You always start in the upper left on a 2 by 2 and a 3 by 3. And so what you have here is, if your numbers are lined up really well, you have a bunch of numbers that are in diagonals that are going from left to right. Okay, so we're going to multiply those numbers that are in the diagonals. So in that first diagonal we have -2 times 1 times -3, which is a +6. In the second diagonal we have -6 times 2 times 6, which is -72. In the third diagonal we have 2 times 6, which is 12, and 12 times 7, which is +84. And then I always go back and make sure I didn't multiply wrong. So I'm looking at that first diagonal. That gives me +6. The second diagonal gives me -72. The third diagonal gives me 84. Then the formula says subtract. This is where the subtraction sign is in the 3 by 3. And then you're going to take the diagonals that go from the bottom left to the top right. So it would be these diagonals. And you'll multiply those numbers together. And I'm videoing this, so if you get home and you can't figure your notes out because you don't know what came first, you could go back and watch the video. Alright, so 6 times 1 times 2 is 12. 7 times 2 times -2 is -4 times 7, so that's -28. And then -3 times 6 times -6 is a positive something. 108? 108, thank you. And then what I would do from here is I would just use my calculator, most likely, and I would do 6 minus 72 plus 84. Somebody's going to tell me what that is. How much? 18. And now I'm going to remember that's always a subtraction sign. And then I'm going to do 12 minus 28 minus 108 in my calculator, and I'm going to get, do what? Plus 108. 12 minus 28 plus 108, and I'm going to get, somebody with a calculator help us out. 90 what? 92. And then we're going to do 18 minus 92 to get our final answer of -74.